to the Sports with Aliyah talk show. I'm so excited to be back, and I think I have the perfect guest to be back with. He really doesn't need an introduction, but Taylor Eldridge, thank you so much for coming on my show today. I'm so excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
And for people, I feel like anyone in Wichita knows your name, but can you just kind of give them a rundown of what your job is at the moment?
Yeah, I'm the Wichita State sports beat reporter for the Wichita Eagle and Kansas.com. So I cover all Wichita State sports, but obviously this is a basketball town, so a lot of men's basketball, and then writing as much as I can about all the other sports. There's other successful sports at Wichita State, obviously. So, but I would say probably 80% of my job is covering the men's basketball team, traveling wherever they go, writing about their games, and just pretty much every day during the season. So yeah, I'm kind of all over Wichita State sports.
Awesome. And obviously I wanted to bring you on to talk about the Shockers, but when I was texting you, I'm like, no, we want to know about you. So we'll start off with just more about you, because I feel like as members of the media, it's a lot of people know us for our work, but not really get to know us. So I'd like to kind of get to know you a little bit more so the fans can as well. So first of all, where did you grow up? I know you're from here, so where did you go to high school?
Yeah, I'm from Wichita and went to Goddard High School. And after that, I started working, or actually my senior year of high school, I started working with the Wichita Eagle, started picking up phones, doing phone calls. That was back when we did box scores and scores every night. I'd go there every Friday night and talk to high school football coaches who would call on their scores and box scores, and we'd get in the newspaper the next day. And I'd stay up until midnight doing that. And so I got my foot in the door with the Eagle that way. And then when I was deciding where I wanted to go to college, they said, well, if you stay somewhere around Wichita, you can start writing for us immediately. So I thought that sounded better than getting a college experience, going to KU or Missouri or somewhere that had a J school. And obviously WSU's communications, their school has gotten so much, it's really good now. I feel like it's really taken off, but back then it wasn't as important. But I was lucky enough to go when Les Anderson was there, and he was a great mentor, and he really helped me out a lot. So that ended up being really cool. But yeah, I started working for the Eagle and started just being a correspondent, writing high school football, doing college football, just really anything. WSU women's basketball back in the Jody Adams era. So yeah, I just picked up different things, and pretty much did that my 4 years of college. I got an internship in Oklahoma City during the Thunder when they were really good. They went to the NBA Finals that summer, so that was cool. And just never really left Wichita. I just always have been here, and a lot. I mean, for probably 10 of the last 13 years I've done high school sports, and that's what kind of my calling card was. And I got hired full time in 2016 to do high school sports, and then I did that for about a year and a half, and then moved over to Wichita State. So I've been doing that for the last this just was my third basketball season, so about the last 3 years, and now I try to help out with pretty much any sports in Wichita. So just random stuff like Nico Hernandez, just random baseball, basketball, football stuff. So I try to keep a good recap of all Wichita sports.
Yeah.
So, but I never really left. Just been in Wichita the whole time.
Yeah, well, it's definitely come full circle for me, because I went to May South, and whenever you were there, everyone would be like, oh my gosh, Taylor's here. And so it'd be a big deal. And then I started in the media, and then I actually started freelancing for the Eagle the year right after you left doing high school. I know you still do high school. And then, so now that we're both at Wichita State, you've really been a quiet mentor for me. I've always admired your work and admired how you write and carry yourself at games. So it's been really cool getting to transition from, you're at my high school covering my game, to actually sitting on the sidelines with you. So how is your experience now, I guess, moving from covering mostly high school athletics to all of Wichita State?
Yeah, it's definitely different. Like you said, when you go to a high school game, it's a big deal because if the media is there, then it's it feels like a bigger game. And that's just probably the one thing I do miss about high school sports is that everybody that you covered, from the coaches to the athletes to the parents, it mattered so much to them. And getting interviewed, seeing, whenever I would interview a kid after a game, their parents or their family would, be taking pictures and taking video of the video. So it was a big deal. And you just can't replicate that at the college level. I mean, for the most part, these are the best of the best. They've been interviewed for most of their lives, especially basketball players. By this point, they've been, the stud wherever they've been for years and years and years. So it's not a big deal to them. To some of them, it's, they don't want to do it. So it's a little different. But I do like the high school part of it, where that, everything is so meaningful. And that's probably the thing that I miss the most. But, college basketball, covering a team at a high level, Wichita State, obviously, they're not at that level that they once were, but they're still, a very competitive team. They were on the brink of the NCAA this year. So I'm a huge basketball fan. So being able to cover basketball at that high level is really, really fun. And I don't regret, taking that chance to cover Wichita State, but I do miss certain things about the high school level.
And I do want to talk to you a little bit about the shift in media and coverage. But first, why newspaper? I mean, you have a face for TV. So, what made you want to do kind of more of the writing side instead of broadcasting?
I think that was just like back in high school. That's just like the first thing that I wanted to do was, write, just be something in sports. And I remember Jeffrey Parson, who's now with, he does the Sports Sunday at K-Wich, he was kind of my mentor back then. Back then, he was the K-State beat reporter for the Wichita Eagle, and my mom knew his mom, and they kind of set us up, and I got to shadow him when I was like a sophomore, junior in high school. And, that was back when K-State basketball was really, really bad, and, hardly anyone was there. But back then, I thought that was the coolest thing ever. It's getting paid to write about sports seemed like that's like a life hack. So I never really considered any other job. I never really wanted to do anything else. I've never had a full-time job anything other than writing. So writing has basically been my main source of income for my whole life. And I've done 2 or 3 little side jobs here and there, but writing has always been the main thing. So I've just kind of set my mind to it, and that's the one thing I wanted to do. And 5 years ago, I didn't do anything on camera. And kind of what you were getting at is how much things have changed. And even just the last 5 years now, I have to do video stand-ups after games, after every game, and do little videos with players and coaches and interviews and stuff like that. So it's changed completely. And now I feel you have to be well-rounded.
Definitely.
You can't just be a writer. You have to be good at multimedia, you have to be good at tweeting, you have to be, good at video stuff. So it's definitely changed a lot.
Well, I think thankfully for you, you have that writing background, where I know a lot of people just do broadcasting. It's hard to be a good writer, and that's what they always tell you is you need to be a good writer before it's even more important than looking good on camera or anything. You just have to have that writing background. So I feel you have a leg up on everyone because of that. So that's awesome. But
I need to start writing. When I do the videos, I just kind of do it off the top of my head. But I think because whenever I see TV people, the sports people around Wichita, they always write out their scripts, and they write it on their phone and they kind of just read it. And I feel I need to start doing that, because whenever I do the post wrap up videos after games, I just kind of just look at a box score and go off my head. But probably I should start, using that to my advantage.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good though. I mean, I'm the same way. Obviously right now I don't have any questions prepared. I just kind of let it flow. So I feel we're the same way in that. But I think they're good. I've watched them. So, and I always see you after the games. Speaking of after the games, you have developed, I try to I know a lot of people don't really see the press conferences, but you are the best question asker. But that also means you get the heat if Greg's in a bad mood, if it's a loss, or if other coaches sometimes they'll be in bad mood. So how have you developed a thick skin? And also, I guess for the younger journalists watching this right now, how do you develop that thick skin where you can ask whatever and not really like be worried about asking questions or asking the wrong question?
I mean, that's an interesting thing, because, you know, the first 10, 11 years I did this, that's another difference with high school coaches, is that you're never really asking tough questions.
Yeah.
You're never really criticizing them, because, you know, these are high school kids. You don't want to, pile on or anything like that. So it's like you're never really, upsetting coaches with your questions. Then you go from that to, that first year I did it. I mean, that was when WSU, I mean, they're a top 10 team, the first year in the American. They have Landry Shamet, future NBA guy. That was a big season, and they probably did not live up to the expectations of that season, and that was tough. That's pretty intimidating when you have to ask tough questions to a coach who is probably upset with the way that they're playing, and he probably doesn't want to be answering questions from some kid that he doesn't even know. So it really was tough, and I think that first year it was just a lot of learning. But I don't think I asked like as many tough questions as I probably could have, but I did ask some, and I just learned from it. And I think over the last 3 years, you kind of build that relationship with the players and the coaches and the coaching staff. And me and Greg's relationship, it's grown, and I think he understands where I'm coming from now. And at first, I showed up out of nowhere, and I'm more of like an analytical guy, and I ask like questions that probably haven't been asked in the last 10 years that he's been here. So probably threw him a little off guard, but now he's gotten to know me better. I've gotten to know him better. So I feel like we're on a pretty good, we understand each other better, and I think that I understand it's just like part of the thing. Like whenever he gets upset, I kind of realize he's not like pissed off at me, or he's not upset at me. He's upset at the situation. So there's some questions where I'll ask and he's like real short, or he'll take it in a whole nother direction and kind of be like sarcastic, and people are like, oh, like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, it's like
unfazed.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really. I don't really let it bother me, because I know he's just doing his job, and I'm doing my job. So I mean, obviously, to his credit, I think Greg Marshall is one of the best quotes in the country. And if you get him, if you ask him the right questions and lead him in the right direction, sometimes you don't even have to do that. I mean, he'll just go off on his own direction. And but I really do think he's like one of the most animated and most thoughtful coaches in college basketball. So that makes the job easier. And as far as like asking tough questions, it's just one of those things that you have to have confidence. And even if it is nerve-wracking, and it is an intimidating platform, because Greg Marshall is one of the most famous coaches in college basketball, and it's a big deal. And there's usually like 15, 20 people in the press room, so it is a little nerve-wracking. But I would just say have confidence in your question. A big thing that helped me at the start was I would write out my questions. After the game, I would kind of write them down and have one prepared. If you're only going to ask one question, just like have it written down. And it's not a big deal if you just look down and read it just like you wrote it. And then I think for the most part, like, he's going to be understanding, and he's going to answer the question as best as he can. But that would be my advice in terms of asking tough questions. If you're going to ask a question after a loss, or maybe a somewhat critical question of a player, a decision, something like that, just be confident in the question. And even if they go off on you, just know that it was a legit question. That's what people want to know about. So even if they get mad about it, that's what people want to know about. So I think that would be my advice to them.
And obviously your work speaks for itself, but you have a really good relationship with the fans and the readers and everyone. So how do you kind of work on that relationship with the fans? I mean, Wichita State fans are amazing, so that already helps. But how did you build up your following, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, with high school sports, it was a lot on Twitter. And now it's a little different. Obviously a lot of Wichita State fans are on Twitter, but I feel like Facebook is kind of the bigger one now. And the Shocker Faithful, that's like a huge group on Facebook. They have like 10,000 people there. So, that's just 10,000 fans that all want to consume Wichita State content. So, my strategy, I guess, if you even want to call it that, is that, I just try to be nice to every single person, like even if they're critical of, my work or even the Eagle or the paywall. You just try to, no matter how, rude or how nasty they are, the comment is, you always try to, it's just basic customer service. It's, you just try to be nice and try to be understanding, try to understand, because it is frustrating, like the paywall, and I can understand why that frustrates people, and stuff like that. But you just try to give them solutions. It's like, hey, download the Shockwaves app. You can get 5 more free reads, and you just try to be nice. And you just never let that guard down. Like you never. Like on Twitter, that's been a big thing of mine too, is like I never get in like back and forth with fans. I never try to be rude to anybody. Some people do that, and like that's their own thing, and that works for them. And but for me, I just feel like if you just try to answer everybody's questions, just take out, it's easier online because it's like you can like take a, even if they're super rude or it's like it annoys you, you can take a breath and you can think before you tweet. So that would be like my biggest word of advice is just don't put anything dumb out there on Twitter, and don't go after anybody. So I think that's kind of like a good rule of thumb.
Yeah. And then speaking of Twitter, your Twitter game is very strong. So how do you find the balance? I really like what you do is you are very fun to follow on Twitter and very informative, because there's people that are just some information, you're like, okay, we get it. And then there's people that are almost like too fun and it's like, okay, where's the score? So how do you find that balance? Because I feel like you've perfected that.
Yeah, I mean, it's different with Wichita State compared to high school sports, because when you're doing high school, everyone that's following you on Twitter, or at least like probably 90% of them, aren't at the game. So like they don't know what's happening. There's no TV, there's no radio. Like they're relying on your tweets to tell them what is happening. So you have to be very informative. You have to be very descriptive. Whereas Wichita State basketball games, every game's on TV. There's a great chance that a lot of your Twitter followers are either at the game or watching it on TV. So like if you're just doing a running play-by-play of the game, like that's not really telling people anything. So that's what I try to tell, aspiring journalists, is that you just kind of realize, what your game is, and if it's a college basketball game, that's if it's a Wichita State basketball game, don't tweet like, oh, Marcus McDuffie just made a 3-pointer. Like I don't try to do that stuff. Like I try to, if I'm going to tweet I usually try to do it during timeouts, because I know that's when people are going to be on their phones. And then I try to put some context behind, okay, Marcus McDuffie, he just set the single season record for 3-pointers in a season, or, that's like the McDuffie's shooting like 45% on threes from the corner or something like that. So I have like advanced stats open during the game, and I try to add context in that regard, because I know obviously the TV analysts are probably doing a great job too. But I want to try to add something to the viewer experience, and so that would be my suggestion, would just be do it during TV timeouts when people are on their phones, and try to think of something to add to the experience instead of just giving a rundown of things that everyone is seeing. So
and then before, I will ask you some questions about current events happening with the Shockers, but before that I'll have a little bit more fun real quick. I know that you get to go to away games, and so that's how I stay up with stuff. I'll just see what you're doing. So where's your favorite place so far you've traveled covering the Shockers?
And the road trip, well, I mean, New York City and the NIT, that's New York City is always fun. But in terms of like the AAC road trips, I would say New Orleans is probably up there. That really surprised me how much there was to do in New Orleans. I really like Philadelphia. Memphis is always fun. But the Florida road trips in January and February, those are pretty unbeatable. So
I always get jealous.
When you get Orlando and Tampa in February and January, those are hard to beat. So, but in terms of just things to do, Philly is always cool. Houston's fun. Pretty much, I mean, I always tell people that the American is probably the best travel conference in the country, like any conference, hands down. because they're all major cities. So minus a few. But now that I did like going up to Stores, but obviously UConn is leaving the conference, but Stores is close to the NBA or the Basketball Hall of Fame up there. It's close to like Boston and New York, so you can kind of take a short ride to one of those. But I would say New Orleans would probably be my favorite.
Yeah, that's awesome. And people can follow you on Instagram and see your pizza reviews. You should work for Barstool because they do all of this, but that's awesome. So let's now transition and just talk a little bit about the Wichita State basketball team, both current team and then everything that's going on with the aftershocks. So first of all, it's no surprise that there's been a lot of turnover and a lot of buzz around that. So what's your take on everything that's happening? And I know college basketball is a different place than it was even a few years ago, so there's more transfers. So what's kind of your take on everything that's been going down?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a lot of factors. I think it's just, the modern day athlete is just wired differently than even 5 years ago. And also they have way more options now. Like you said, the transfer market is just way easier to transfer now. And they don't even have to, like what a lot of them did, the season ends and people remember, they're in Dallas or they're in Fort Worth. The season gets canceled. They come back. I think it was like on a Thursday. 4 of them transfer on Friday without even having like the team meeting. So they don't even have to talk to the coaches. They can just go straight to the athletic department and say, hey, I want to go into the transfer portal. So it's just easier to do that. And I think, more power to them. I think that is a good thing for college athletes. Like if they feel like they can be happier or be in a better situation, I'd say go for it. And I do understand why that's frustrating to coaches because, I play, NCAA football growing up. Like I used to make depth charts and plan them out years ahead. And like it is nice to know like, okay, if I have this guy, like he's going to be here for 3 or 4 years, and when they leave after 1 year, that does throw off your plans. But I think that's just an adjustment that Division I coaches are going to have to make. It's not, you can't build teams 3 or 4 years. You have to do it year by year. Yeah. And that is frustrating, and that's going to be new, but that's something that they're going to have to deal with. So I think it was just a situation where a couple of players, a handful of them were upset about playing time. A handful of them were upset just about the fit, and they felt like they could go somewhere else and just have a better basketball fit and a better fit for them personally. So like I said, I'm all for the players being able to leave and go find, whatever they want to, whatever a better situation they believe. So I think all those players did. I think the landing spots that you can all point and say, okay, that makes sense. Like this is, a better basketball fit. This is closer to home. This is more playing time down the line. And then, you look at Wichita State, you look at the job that Marshall did with the recruiting. They feel like they upgraded athletically and just raw potential. They feel really, really good about the team going into next year. A lot obviously depends on if Dexter Dennis returns, but, if he's back and they get everyone they think is on the team, then, they think they can be right back in the same situation in the NCAA tournament. I think it worked out for both sides. It was, a little, whenever you have 6 players leave a program, that's obviously going to make headlines. But I think it's probably not, it's not a problem unless it happens again. Like, next season we're right back in this situation. Then it's going to be a question of like, okay, what's going on? But, for it to happen one season, I think you have to give, Coach Marshall the benefit of the doubt. He's been doing this a long time. He's had success everywhere he's been. His way obviously works. Yeah. And I think it's just a matter of getting kids that are bought into that way. And now they feel like they have a group that will do that.
Yeah, gotcha. And then one more pretty big piece of news that just broke recently. The aftershocks are not going to be in the TBT. Obviously, they didn't plan for this. No one has planned for anything that has been happening. So what's your take on that? Do you think it was a good decision for them to just pull out because of everything that was going on?
Yeah, I think it was just going to be so tough to make it happen. And, when the TBT decided to go to Columbus instead of, Wichita made a really, really strong push.
Yeah.
I know Wichita State really, really wanted it to be here. And when they decided that they wanted to be closer to the East Coast and cater to, most of the teams out there, and that's their right, and I think that's probably a good move for them to get, if they want the best teams to come, that's going to be a tough ask to have them drive all the way to Kansas, even though it's in the middle of the country. A lot of the teams that play in TBT are on the East Coast, so it's a really, really far drive for them. Once that didn't happen, I think that was kind of the deciding thing. And when they moved up the time schedule, the Wichita Regional was supposed to be at the end of July, and then they pushed up to Columbus. I think they're starting June 30th, and they're playing 10 days. So I think that was a huge factor. And if you go there and one player tests positive, you're out of the tournament.
Yeah.
And you're asking players to drive, 14, 15 hours to Columbus. And if just anyone on the team tests positive, they're out of the tournament. So that would have been tough. So I think it's just best for everyone involved just to, take this summer off. Ron Baker wasn't going to play this summer. He's still banged up, healing. Everybody wants to see Ron play on this team.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to see Ron back in Koch Arena. So if that wasn't going to happen this summer, it's better just to wait next summer. Hope that he'll have to figure out his next basketball situation too, and hopefully they can get back. And everyone wants to see that team back at Koch Arena in 2021.
For sure. And before we wrap things up, I will just have you part with two things. First is I want to know something that not a lot of people know about you, that's your hobbies outside of sports, and then I'll have you end with a piece of advice for anyone watching this that wants to be where you're at. So first of all, what's something that not a lot of people know about you?
Ooh, okay. So, I'm big. I still play a lot of basketball.
Yep, I see him at my neighborhood.
Yeah, we play for Forest Lakes. And it used to be the Northwest YMCA. That's where I play. That's where I see a lot. It's funny. I see a lot of like the high school kids that I cover. I've played with them at the Northwest Y,
That's
and then the Vincent brothers at Eisenhower, Easton Hunter at Andell. These are all state caliber kids, and it's fun to see them, play against them at the Y, and then kind of see them grow up in the high school. And there's always kind of a piece of me rooting for guys like that to see them do well. A couple of those Carroll kids that were on the really good teams the last few years. So that's fun. And then recently I've gotten really into tennis too. That's been my quarantine game.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I got a couple of roommates, so I play. We just play doubles, singles, whatever. So, I try to stay as active as possible. And so basketball and tennis, those are kind of my things right now.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then to close it out, what's a piece of advice for anyone that's wanting to be like you? Obviously you can't be replaced, but what's something that you would want to tell people that are watching?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece of advice would be to capitalize on all the opportunities there are now compared, back when I was coming up, websites, blogs, YouTube, that wasn't really a thing. Like if you wanted to write for somebody, you had to write for, the Eagle or the Sunflower or Vibe. There wasn't really like any other outlets. Now you don't have to, write for any of those people. You can create your own platform. You can create your own website. You can go on Wix or like whatever Blogspot and create your own website and start writing, or just start a YouTube channel. I think you're a great example of grinding and hustling and doing a lot. You have your hand in so many different things. I think you would be a perfect example to as someone who you don't work for like full time for anyone, and you created your own kind of platform. And I think that's a great model to follow, is that you don't have to wait for someone to hire you full time. Like you can just go out there and create something for yourself. And that would be the biggest thing, is that, people, employers don't really care. Like, if you're doing good work, like it's good work regardless. It doesn't matter if you're getting paid for it or not. In their eyes, obviously you want to get paid for it, but like that's a great start, is if you start producing like quality work, quality content, like on your own. You have a good social media presence. You're good on Twitter, you're good on Facebook. You can create your own YouTube and Facebook page and stuff like that, and really market yourself. So I think that's the biggest thing is just just stay grinding, and it's going to take a lot of time and effort. There are only so many jobs out there, and it's really hard to get hired full time. I waited. I got my foot in the door when I was a high school senior at the Eagle, and I didn't get hired full time until like 9 years after I graduated, like high school. So it took a long time for me to get hired full time, but I never lost faith. I just kept grinding and kept doing. I mean, this is what I love to do. So it didn't really matter if I get paid on salary, or if I was getting paid like 20 bucks a story. So I think whether you love it or not, that's going to be the thing that kind of carries you through.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for the hype up too. So Taylor, I know almost anyone watching this will know where to find you at, but if you want to plug your social media, where can they follow you?
Yeah, on Twitter, Taylor Eldridge, and then on Facebook, I have a Facebook page too, but mainly just Twitter. So, and then just check out my work at kansas.com. And if you want to pay for a subscription, that's awesome. But you can also download the Shockwaves app, and that gives you a few more reads. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you all for watching. You can follow me on social media at Funschelle18 and Sports with Aliyah. Thanks.